If you're talking about it, I'll be talking about it. Dennis Prager here. Join me this morning at 11, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Judge Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing in the Supreme Court of the United States begins today. And you've had the expected rhetoric from the expected sources. We expect some histrionics, a lot of talk about women's rights, specifically the only right the left seems to care about, which is the Supreme Court divined right, penumbras and emanations, to an abortion. And Elizabeth Warren and the other erstwhile contenders for the 2020 nomination are out in force. But the handicapping right now is that Kavanaugh, absent some kind of major gaffe, has support of all of the Republicans. Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, said 30 years ago Kavanaugh's confirmation would have been unanimous.
Wow.
Probably
How
so.
Times have changed.
Yeah, but it may be more than just the Republicans. You've got a lot of blue state Democrats under immense pressure to vote to confirm. Blue state Democrats facing re-election and facing fights for their political lives, like Joe Donnelly next door in Indiana. And if it's clear that all the Republicans are going to hold fast, I suspect you'll see some of those blue state Democrats fold in anyway, because what's the difference? It's a done deal. For more on the topic and the nature of these hearings, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend Randy Barnett, a Georgetown law professor and author of Our Republican Constitution, Securing the Liberty and Sovereignty of We, the People. Randy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy.
So what do you expect from the hearing this week?
Well, so far, it looks like it's going to be the usual. I mean, of course, today is going to be simply senator statements, and we'll get a sense of where the senators, especially the Democrat senators, are going to be coming from by their opening statements. And then tomorrow, the candidate, the nominee, testifies for probably 2 days before we hear from witnesses. And if we judge by the buildup, they haven't found something that is particularly embarrassing or damaging, although it's possible they found some stuff that they're not telling us about yet. It would be sort of uncharacteristic not to leak it, but it's quite possible they haven't leaked it.
Well,
to get a bombshell.
You're clearly overlooking the AP politics bombshell last week that on the campus of Yale, one Brett Kavanaugh preferred to play basketball rather than engage in these social justice mobocracy events on campus.
Oh, you're right. I did miss that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Okay.
And then, well, you have Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. He wants to delay the hearing. It's not going to happen, but because of last night's document dump, 42,000 pages of documents related to Brett Kavanaugh's time in the Bush White House. Do you think there's anything in there that could be, inflammatory?
No, I don't, but I don't know what's in there, and they'll find out what's in there. Look, it is unprecedented to demand everything that a nominee has ever written or opined upon. If that were not the case, we would get all the bench memos and internal correspondence of judges who are being nominated to the Supreme Court. Why don't we get those? That would give us a clue to what they're thinking. Let's have their emails. How about all the judges' emails that they've ever sent to anybody? That would tell us something about how they're thinking. Of course, in the case of Brett Kavanaugh, some reporters went after his wife's emails as she's city manager in Virginia, in a town in Virginia. So, yeah, I mean, what I would like to see happen, here's what I would like to see, and I don't think we're going to see it. I would like to see the Democrats have an honest debate about judicial philosophy, which is really what they did have around Robert Bork. They disagreed with his originalism, and they said so. Let them have a disagreement with Judge Kavanaugh's approach to interpreting the Constitution, and let him explain what it is, because I'd like to hear that explanation myself. And then let them explain what their own views are and how they differ, which is something you hardly ever hear them do.
Right. And also, I mean, since Kavanaugh clearly passes one of the Barnett rules there, have a record, he's got hundreds of opinions that he's written on a range of issues. So if you want to question my thinking on a particular opinion in a case I've decided, I decided as a judge that, fine, let's talk about that case. And that would be illustrative, too, because there are many issues that he's tackled as a federal judge. But that's probably going to be drowned out by a lot of accusations of wanting to put women in chains and the like we've heard from Elizabeth Warren.
Well, interestingly enough, today in the New York Times, Eric Posner, who's a law professor in your neck of the woods at the University of Chicago Law School, and Emily Bazelon, a writer from the New York Times, have a piece in the Times about how Kavanaugh is not an originalist because originalism leads to results that are not necessarily conservative, and he's a consistent conservative, so he deviates from originalism whenever conservatism requires him to do so. This is a very interesting new line of attack because previous to this, we heard from Erwin Chemerinsky that originalism only leads to conservative results. And so if you're an originalist, it's because you want conservative results. And now we have two incompatible theories of criticism of originalism. One is that it leads to progressive results and conservative judges are not originalist enough. And the other one is it leads to conservative results and that's why they're originalists. So let's hear that debate. Let's find out what he says. For one thing, as you know from my last appearance on this show, I had concerns about his originalism, whether he was committed to originalism or not. So I want to hear him ask questions by Mike Lee and others about that, and I want to hear what his answers are myself. I'm pretty confident he's going to answer them a way I like them to be answered, but I want to hear them.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. It's a good point, and it would be interesting to have a substantive moment or two in the confirmation hearing. It would be novel in these times.
Yeah. What else do you think will be the Democrats' area of attacks? Is Roe versus Wade going to be prevalent?
Well, of course, that is going to be. There's going to be a lot of talk about that. That is exactly the question that he will refuse to answer. There's going to be talk about executive power. And we talk about the administrative state, frankly, I would like to hear his answers on those questions. I think he'll get an opportunity to give his views on general constitutional matters that don't involve specific cases and controversies. I predict he'll be well prepared to answer those questions, and we'll learn something from them. So, unlike many hearings, unlike Supreme Court arguments where what matters is the questions, not the answers, because you want to know where the justices are coming from. Here, because the senators generally don't, they ask staff-prepared questions and don't do very many follow-ups, and they mainly give speeches. Really what matters is the answers, not the questions. So I want to hear what he says and how he says it, and then I will judge him accordingly.
Yeah, consistent with that, too. I mean, a discussion of the boundaries consistent with the discussion of originalism and federalism, a discussion of the boundaries between the federal government and the state government would be illuminating, at least to me, too, when you've got issues like federal immigration law enforcement necessarily in the individual states.
Right. Of course, the closer you get to a specific question like that, the less he's going to answer it. And just a warning for your listeners and your viewers online, nominees have become extremely adept at avoiding answering questions like this, and every judge from Republican to Democrats, dating back to Justice Kennedy, who actually did answer a lot of questions. That's before the norm changed. Have mainly ducked most of these questions, and they have a particular way of doing so, and I suspect he's going to use some of those techniques as well.
Can you predict any Democratic senators that are going to vote in favor of Brett Kavanaugh?
I don't have any inside information, Amy. Sometimes here in D.C. I do have some inside information, but on this question I don't. So I just assume not predict. In your setup, you explained how some senators in purple states are going to want to, or maybe even in Trump states, are going to be concerned about this and may vote for him. They're under tremendous pressure from the Democratic base and donor class not to do that. So we'll just have to see who wins out.
All right. He is Randy Barnett, Georgetown law professor. The book, Our Republican Constitution, Securing the Liberty and Sovereignty of We the People. Randy, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Always good to be here. Thanks.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
For more than